before the age of 10 that my dad would come home drunk off his ass and, hold a gun to our heads or a knife to our throat. I mean, guns and knives and blood and gunshots were a reality. The first time I was shot, I was 6 years old. And
Oh my.
Reveille, reveille, all hands heave out.
Has there ever been a time in your life when you realized no one was coming to save you? Have you ever been backed into a corner in your life and realized you were going to have to step up and be your own hero? Then welcome to the Perfectly Flawed podcast. On this show, we lift the voices of individuals who have overcome adversity and give them a platform to share their powerful stories of perseverance. It might just be what you need to motivate yourself into taking the next important step of becoming your own hero. Now, welcome to the show, the host of the Perfectly Flawed podcast, Navy veteran Janae Sergio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Perfectly Flawed podcast. The story you're about to hear today is one of absolute resilience. I met Lia Coryell through the Pink Beret Foundation, which unites women veterans, and we immediately hit it off. We have some similarities in our journey, and what really makes Lia stand out is how she chooses to respond to adversity. Not only is Lia an Army veteran, but she continues to proudly represent the United States as the first and only woman Paralympian in the sport of Para Archery. She is currently ranked #1 in the world. Welcome, Lia. It's an absolute honor to have you.
thank you. I just need to clarify that there are divisions in the Paralympics, and I am the only one that is in the W1 class.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That's still absolutely incredible.
It still blows my mind. I'm like,
You're amazing. Lia, may I ask where you're from and where you currently live?
I am from northwestern Wisconsin. I came from a very small rural town and grew up in that area. And now I live just outside San Antonio, Texas. Yeah, and Texas looks good on me. So this is probably going to be home. I'm very happy here.
And we love having you here. I'm also in San Antonio, and I love getting to see you often. Yes. One of the things we bonded over was a similarity in our childhood. Can you tell me about it's absolutely, your childhood is absolutely mind-blowing, and I know I'm going to learn more about it right now. I've got my box of tissues right here ready to go. Tell me about your childhood and also what led to you joining the Army.
Okay, so I kind of got off on life on probably the wrong side of the line. So my birth certificate, my dad is listed as his occupation because in the 60s they did this. He is a felon and an inmate at the state penitentiary. So that's how I came into this world. That's how I started. My mom and dad were very poorly educated, very poorly matched. He was a very violent criminal. My mom put up with his abuse and then passed it down. So my entire childhood was about survival and finding ways to survive. And it was my mom's too. And some of her ways to survive did not benefit me as a girl, as a daughter child, because it fell on my shoulders pretty quickly on, probably by 5 or 6 years old, that I realized I was probably smarter than the people that were supposed to be keeping me safe and raising me. And they realized it too. So I became the 8-year-old buffer that was, filling out school forms and applying for welfare or trying to get, food stamps for my family. We're talking 8 years old. So I grew up very, very quickly as a child, in and out of foster care, because there were times they just couldn't take care of us. There were times, it was not uncommon before the age of 10 that my dad would come home drunk off his ass and, hold a gun to our heads or a knife to our throat. I mean, guns and knives and blood and gunshots were a reality. The first time I was shot, I was 6 years old. And
oh my gosh.
When the police came, they blamed it on my 5-year-old brother. And then the police took him at 5 in the squad car to jail to teach him a lesson not to play with guns, but he's not the one who shot me.
Wow.
So the whole childhood was like this. And here's the part that, we have talked about is the foster care and the abuse and, the sexual exploitation of female daughters as a way to gain favor in a very fucked up world. That resilience came because my entire life, starting with that birth certificate, people have underestimated me. They've not had expectations, as you know, for kids like us, the expectations are this low. So I don't know that I started out resilient. I started out rebellious as hell. I'll fucking show you. So kindergarten, we get there, we show up, and I don't know what my name looks like. And the teacher looked at the principal and she said, "Here we go." And I'm like, I see this. I might be 5 years old, but I see this. And I continually saw it through my life. So my ability to achieve and overcome came from being rebellious. Tell me now. What about now? Eventually it led to resilience, but it started out as rebellion. And I don't think there's a bad thing about that.
Yeah, you're amazing. Just the fact that you overcame that in itself is already absolutely incredible and telling of your story. And I know we're going to learn so much more about you, but just absolutely incredible that you were able to pull through that and be so strong at such a young age.
But do we have a choice? Did we have a choice, Janae?
We didn't.
I was the oldest, I don't think I had a choice because I was born a protector and a defender. So when I was kicked out of my home, and at 17, like you, was alone on the streets with 2 cardboard boxes, my entire worldly possession fit in 2 boxes. Because the entire time growing up, my mom had a dresser with 4 drawers in it. I'm 17 years old. All of my clothes would fit in 1 drawer because we each got one.
Wow.
All of it. So anything beyond that would blow my mind. So I knew, because the recruiters came to the high school, and I hear now about how they prey on the vulnerable, or that it was a lifesaver for me. The military and that whole I will protect and defend is a part of who I am at the core, and it fit that need, and it fit the need to get me out of the situation I was in and to give me hope for the future, because I wasn't stupid. If I stayed there, I wasn't going anywhere.
Absolutely.
So I think the Army absolutely saved my life.
That's amazing.
Even knowing what was going to happen, the wheelchair, the being sick, knowing that, I would do it all over in a heartbeat.
I love that. And you're a very proud American. Can you tell us a little bit about how the decision to join the military went for you? Like, when did you join and how did you get recruited? And why did you choose the Army?
Well, back in the day, now we're talking in the early 80s, they would take poor teenagers and get them jobs at government facilities. And recruiting offices are government facilities. So I was assigned to the Army recruiter's office. And, I met all the other recruiters too. But my thought was, I didn't join thinking it was going to be a lifelong thing. I joined because it was going to be a ticket to education, because my parents had none and they were stuck. Mm-hmm. And I knew very young that I didn't want to live the life that they lived. And to do that, it was going to be education of some form. So I didn't want to sign a 4-year contract. That seemed like forever to me. But I'd sign a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract. And I got recruited. Actually, my guidance counselor at the high school said, "Have you thought about joining the military?" But actually, people started recommending the military to me very young, 13, 14 years old, because I think people saw the potential in me. Mm-hmm. And, you would think I was rebellious, but I was not unlawful. Like I never broke the law. Well, I never got caught breaking the law. So I didn't have like a criminal record or anything. And, let's be real. I'm smart as shit.
You are.
What I don't know in knowledge, I have figured out how to find the answers. Mm-hmm. And I think knowing that going forward, you have to have, that was my plan moving forward. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But the funny thing is when I joined the military and I got there, New Jersey is like, whoa, what is this whole thing? I'd never been on a plane, but I'd never spoken to a person of color. Mm-hmm. I had no idea when I walked into the barracks and there were 2 women together. And I'm like, you know that she's a woman, right? I mean, do you know that? Because I had no idea what homosexuality, what, being a lesbian or LGBTQ, I had no idea what that was. The biggest, hardest part for me of basic training was I could not understand what they were saying. And my drill sergeants literally, first of all, they called me the R word, and they're like, "You're a damn idiot." Oh, it came up, and I still didn't know what they said. So I'm like 5-10 seconds waiting past what everybody else is doing because I need to see what they're doing. Like, is that present arms? Is that forward march? Think of the puppies doing this because I was doing that. So I enlisted as an MP. I didn't even get a basic training, and they pulled that off the table. And they're like, "No, you can be a cook or you can be a truck driver, but you're not going to be an MP," which is hilarious because I'm smart as hell.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned the diversity that you were exposed to in the military, because I think a lot of people who have never served don't realize how important that is to us. And, the fact that we come from all over the country and very different lifestyles and backgrounds, and we're all put together in a unit where we learn very quickly to, rely on one another and to really understand, like take time to understand the different backgrounds and lifestyles that people have. It's something that makes us very unique.
It really does. And what an experience, especially for, a girl from me from northern Wisconsin, but also from the girls that came from Chicago and New York and Miami, to have this completely clueless, naive white chick from the north. And it's funny because the first time we were all in our group together, one of the girls turned her hand over and I was like, "Your hand is a different color on the top than on the bottom."
Wow.
And she said, "So are my feet." But I had no idea. And I didn't have any negative connotations. I had none. But they learned a lot from me too about, they just assumed, that I was Beaver Cleaver. And when they began to learn about me and, again, protector, defender, leader, it was really cool to see what you assume, even at 17, 18, 19 years old, and how quickly that bond forms regardless of anything else. You can slap all these different labels that make us different. But in the end, we were all there for the same thing and we all wanted to succeed. So how are we going to do that?
That's beautiful. How long, Lia, did you serve in the Army?
I was in active duty 18 months, but the last 6 months I cannot remember what it is, like a medical leave before I actually was med boarded out. So I had a reaction to the vaccines right when we first got to AIT. And one of them was the anthrax vaccine. And a whole bunch of us women got really, really sick from it. But what they thought it was a meningitis outbreak in the women's dorm because everybody had different symptoms. And they're like, "What's going on with that?" So what happened was it was a bad batch of vaccines, and I'm not anti-vaccine, but I think there were 64 in the battalion of us that got sick from it. We all got an autoimmune disease. We're talking lupus, ALS, Parkinson's, MS, psoriasis, from here to here. That's what it was. But they did not know that when I was med boarded out. They just knew that I had a neurological problem. Like I couldn't feel my left leg at all. Oh, wow. And then I would be fine. But the left leg thing never came back. So yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah. Wow. I know a lot about you and we spent a lot of time together, but I hadn't realized how early on you experienced and so I kind of left that question for later in the interview. But if you don't mind, can you kind of explain to us a little bit about your journey with having been, I guess I'll explain to our viewers because I haven't yet, that you are currently living with a progressive form of multiple sclerosis. Can you tell us how you ultimately did discover that you have it, and then how has it changed your life?
Well, here's the thing about getting MS in the military. I was ashamed because it was so important to me not to be a failure because everybody expected me to be a failure. And I felt like I failed. I didn't tell anybody that I was a veteran, like didn't introduce myself as that. until I was 45, and I went back to get my master's degree in adult education. And it's on my records that I'm a vet because it's a VIGI bill.
Mhm.
And they said, would you be our student vet rep on our board? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you can find a real vet.
Oh,
So there's 1,500 student vets at the college at UW Milwaukee. So I put up a sign that said free chili for vets, and they all showed up, and I had like 2 quack pots. But I wanted to see who was there because that was my graduate assistant. And they chose me to be their leader. I'm like, I'm sure you can find a real vet. And they said, you stepped up and said, I will protect and defend this country. You did what 98% of this country doesn't do. Right or wrong, they don't do it. You did it. You served to the best of your abilities. You got hurt on their dime and on their time. You are a vet. And I still struggle with that because there's the wannabes that say I'm not a vet, or they tell women they're not a vet if you've never deployed, or if you didn't have the MOS that they think a vet has, then you're not a vet. And it's like, the more I got into the veteran world from 45 on, and I'm going to be 58 next week, the more I realized you don't get to determine that. You can say it. You have the right to say it. You don't get to determine. The people that really drove it home to me most recently, I do the veteran shoot with Black Rifle. And I told them the same. I said, I'm the world's oldest private. Gotta be. My kid outranked me before he even went in. I'm like Beetle Bailey. And they said exactly what those kids had said 10 years before. They're like, Lia, you're a vet.
absolutely.
And you're a leader, and you're still using your military background to connect people and to lead. That right there makes you a veteran.
Absolutely. And
So
you're
that's how that came up.
and you're still representing the United States in your Paralympian journey. So you're absolutely a veteran. I can't believe that anyone would ever tell you otherwise, but I do understand the feeling of kind of living with that. I guess you could say kind of, it's not so much an identity crisis, but it's like, where do I fit in this community? Because I have also heard veterans say, well, you didn't serve a full 4 years, or you didn't serve your full term, so you don't really get to call yourself a veteran. And they don't take into consideration some of those situations, like what happened to you. You were there, you were fully ready to go out and serve this country. And unfortunately, decisions that the Army made left you in a position where you were unable to. That doesn't change anything for you.
But I hear that you're not a vet very commonly with women.
Mm-hmm.
If I served 2 years and a man served 2 years, it is the men, some of the men, that will tell me straight up, you're not a vet because you didn't finish your term of enlistment. And I'm like, nice try. I don't give a shit what you say. You don't get to determine that. But when I got out of the military, I didn't keep hardly any of my uniforms because I was ashamed of myself. And I never, ever, ever thought I would have the opportunity to wear a United States of America uniform that said USA, United States, with my name on it, on the back, on the front, or whatever. And the most precious moments to me were the World Championships, which were in February of this year, and the Pan American Championships. Because when you win, and they raise the flags. They raise the gold flag first, then silver, then bronze. So they're staggered. And they play the Gold Medalist national anthem. They played that for me. I did that to represent my country. And I just feel redeemed. I'm like, never in a million years did I think I would be able to do that. What a gift. What a blessing that I have been able to experience that.
You're a blessing. And you're a blessing. You are a blessing to this country and to the many people that you have the opportunity to influence, including myself. How, if you don't mind, let me know, like, how was your transition out, and like what led to you becoming part of the archery team? And I apologize if I say it wrong. It's the Para Archery team, correct?
Yes, or the Paralympic Archery team.
Okay.
But I forgot what you had asked about MS. So when I first got out, I had relapse remitting MS. So I would do really well for a while, and then I would have a relapse where like I would lose feeling in my feet or the side of my head, or I've lost my vision 3 times. And the antidote to that is to put you in the hospital and pump you full of steroids and all these other things. And I would always snap back. But as as I got older, I got married and I have 2 kids. I was a teacher. As I got older, it became harder and harder to move. So I went with a cane, and then I ended up with a walker. And I did not want to go into a wheelchair because nothing says cripple like a wheelchair. No wheelchair. Well, I ended up in the hospital in 2014 and I couldn't move, like could not coordinate anything, like even feeding myself. And I kept waiting for it to get better. And they came in and they said, "You're never getting better. This is progressive now. Tomorrow will never be better than today. So you need to figure this out because time isn't on your side." And they took me off all treatment plans. They put me in palliative care, which is comfort measures only. And I was devastated because my kids were 16 and 18. But you gotta realize too, my kids have only ever known me sick. Sometimes that plays with my mind. They've never had a healthy mom. I'm probably healthier in more ways than one now than I was when they were growing up because I refused to use a wheelchair. When I ended up in the wheelchair, it never dawned on me that my kids hadn't been able to go to the farmer's market because my chunky butt couldn't get anywhere in the walker, or they'd never been to an amusement park or the Milwaukee County Zoo. Because of my stubbornness, I was vain. I didn't want people to think. And going into this chair was the most empowering thing that's ever happened to me. I've lost almost 100 pounds because when you kind of roll your chunky butt around, you're going to be careful what goes in here because it gets heavy or transferring or whatever. So once I ended up in the chair, then actually more opportunities opened up because you look like a wounded vet, which kills me. Yeah. It absolutely kills me. But I got invited to do these adaptive sports clinics. So the adaptive sports clinic I went to was in San Diego, and every day we did like a different sport. Well, I'm almost 100 pounds heavier, like 48 years old. I don't play wheelchair basketball. I'm not a track athlete. And we get to archery. And I'm like, okay, I can do this because you just sit there, right? That's what you do. I'm good at sitting. I'm really good at this now. And so I actually met the coach of the US team and we got to be friends, and she invited me to some camps. And it turned out that adaptive sports camp was actually a talent ID camp to fill slots for the Rio Paralympics in 2016, which didn't make sense to me because I'm like looking around and I'm the most impaired one. And they said, when I went to get classified, "I think you're going to be a W1. And I'm like, "What does that mean?" And one of the vets on the team, he says, "Means you're the most fucked up." And I'm like, "I'm not. You're token broken. I'm out. I'm out. I'm finally feeling better. I'm out." But my coach said to me, "Lia, we have never in the United States had a W1 woman that was able to classify and shoot the scores needed. You can do that. And it's your platform. Because there's people out there that think that they can't do something because somebody told them they couldn't. And that is not you in any sense of the word."
She saw your rebellious side. She was like, yeah, I know this one.
She said, "You are going to move mountains for people that didn't know they need to move. And then you're going to show them how to do it for themselves because that's who you are. And this is your opportunity." And I can't thank Coach Randy Smith enough because I'm like, "You're right. You are absolutely right." So I started going to the camps, and I did get really good at archery because it's sitting, first of all. And archery is the sport where to be a good archer, you cannot think about anything else other than the arrow you have on the bow and what you're doing on your shot process, or it's not going to go where you want it. That's why it's such a zen. It's actually a martial art, one of the oldest ones, but that's why it's such a zen sport. Because I shoot my bow, and the ladies tell me this now too in the Pink Beret archery program. It's like I need to shoot my bow to clear my head because you can't think of, there's an analogy. You can only think about the arrow or what you're doing now. You can't say, "Oh, what was for lunch? Oh, did I turn the burner off? Oh my gosh, I wonder if my kid is going to be mad at me about this, or I'm going to get in trouble at work or whatever." You cannot do that and be a successful archer. It's a very mental sport. And that's why I think it works so well with vets and probably some active duty too. Instead of the pop, pop, pew, 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 it's that stillness, because when you do it right, the cadence and the timing and the rhythm of your shot matches your heartbeat. So when you're at full draw, the end of your bow, the little stabilizer will announce your heartbeat. And that's a fact. That's a biological fact.
Wow. That's amazing. You
Yeah,
mentioned,
it's pretty cool.
so you mentioned the Pink Beret archery team, and so what you've done, you've turned your story into an incredible journey for yourself, but now you're moving that journey towards helping
Yes.
others. And I love that because we talked a lot about this at the Pink Berets retreat, that we're not just survivors of our circumstances and what we've been through, but we are heroes because we're turning around and we're using our stories to help others. So can you tell me
Yes.
more about the Pink Beret, the archery team that you've started, and what's up and coming for that? Because I think that's really important for us to share.
I'm going to touch back on really quick on how I even got to the Pink Berets.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in basic training, one of the drill sergeants especially would corner me in either the supply closet or call me into his office or whatever. And to be quite blunt, he'd stick his tongue down my throat and grab my boobs and stick his hand down his pants and get himself off. And I was like, this is weird.
Yeah.
This is really odd. And so I told the female drill sergeant Ortiz, and this is exactly what she said. You joined the goddamn Army, Coryell. What the fuck did you think was going to happen? My advice is to make him work for every inch. Janae, it was a decade before I even understood what that meant.
Oh
so
my
to me, that
gosh.
was not sexual assault because he did not penetrate me. It was a perk of his job because of my childhood. It was so normalized. I never connected the dots that was sexual assault or that it was even really wrong because he was a man. And they get special circumstances because, he's in a building with all women. That's the way I was raised with that mindset. So it never occurred to me that was anything but what it was. But my good friend, Lucy Delgadio, was involved, and I met her through an archery and adaptive program in the Pink Berets. And I'm like, so tell me about the Pink Berets. And when I learned about it was right when the Vanessa Guillen situation came to light. And I went, and all the I am Vanessa Guillen. And I'm like, well, I'm not Vanessa Guillen, but oh my gosh, how could this happen? Da, 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 da. And we were on our way to a Pink Beret retreat, leadership retreat. And for the first time in almost 4 decades, I said something about it. And Stephanie Gattis, who is the founder and director of Pink Berets, they were in the front of the Jeep, pulled off the highway, and they turned around and looked at me and they said, "Are you shitting me?" And I'm like, no, because it wasn't sexual assault, because he didn't get it in. And they're like, "Lia, that absolutely is sexual assault." Yeah. So I had no idea. So then, but the whole Vanessa Guillen thing, the fact that to me, she's a child. Mm-hmm. My son was the same age as she was when they were in the military at the same time. He's at Fort Campbell, she's at Fort Hood. And the things he's telling me as a medic, that the people are coming in telling him because he's the medic, men and women, fit this Vanessa Guillen. And it wasn't that I didn't believe him, it's that I didn't believe it was that big of a problem. I'm so ashamed to say that because I didn't, we detach. Mm-hmm. We compartmentalize. And it's like, well, and it became, fuck no, that's not going to happen. So I'm like, I wore one of their shirts to a big Vegas shoot. It's the largest indoor archery tournament in the world. We're talking over 3,000 archers. And I think this year there's almost 40 different countries represented there. And I go as a member and a leader of the, USA Para Archery team. And I wore my Pink Beret shirt. And Lucy came with me as my aero agent. And everybody stopped me and asked me about my shirt. So then Lucy would tell them about the Pink Berets and about, how it was meant to support and help women heal from invisible wounds from their time in service, which in the beginning, I kept saying women who have been sexually assaulted. And I'm like, why am I doing that? That's not it. That's not it, Lia. Mm-hmm. It's about being wounded in ways, and there's a difference to me between injury and wounded. An injury heals. You can heal it with a cast, but a wound heals from the inside out, and it will always leave something missing. There are wounds, and we can get beyond them and we can heal them, but something will always be taken from us that we didn't choose to. So that's how I became started in the Pink Berets. Well, we were there last year. Actually, some of the, pros and some of the top vendors there were like, maybe you should think about doing archery with some of the ladies. And I was already doing it at their retreats. And it's funny because I was allotted like 2 hours on a Wednesday afternoon, and every day the ladies wanted to do archery. And I'm like, today's not archery day. Can we do archery today? Can we do archery today? Because of this, the peace, the quiet, the success. So in 1 year, we've put together the United States' very first all veteran archery team, and it happens to be women warriors. So we have probably 35 women signed up. We practice here outside of San Antonio every Sunday at Leading Edge Archery. And we've selected 11 of the ladies are going to represent Pink Beret Archery at the Vegas tournament for the first time ever. So when I called Vegas to register us, the lady was beyond, she's like, what? What? I said, yeah, women, all women veteran team. And it's called, the Pink Berets. And now we're looking at logos, and the ladies are stoked. I thought, my own baggage, I'm like, are people going to ask them what happened to them? Because people ask me that in my wheelchair all the time. Yeah. But if you look up the Pink Berets, you get the gist. None of these women are afraid, because guess what? It doesn't define them. And that's something I think I've taught them. You are not your diagnosis. You are not what happened to you. You get to determine your identity. So what's it going to be? Are you going to be bitter? Are you going to be better? Like you had. Are you going to be a victim? Are you going to be your own fucking hero? Amen. You're going to be your own damn hero, girl. And this is how we're going to do it together. So yeah, we're going to Vegas in February. I'm super stoked. We have a couple of different disciplines in it. We have a vendor table there. I'm really stoked, and they're stoked. They asked me to do a seminar for all of the Vegas shoot on mental resiliency using the Pink Berets as my catalyst.
That's amazing. And Lia, I interviewed, my first interview was actually Val, who I met also at the Pink Beret retreat. And she really inspired me to start the podcast because she shared her story outwardly for the first time with me. And she told me, I'm really looking forward to being able to share my story one day with the world, but I don't have the courage yet, is what she told me. That was just a few months ago. Yeah. Yesterday, or this week, actually, I ran into her again. And it was actually at your guys' archery meeting. And she was like, I'm ready to tell my story. And when she said that, I was like, whoa, that was a fast transition, because just a few months ago, you were not ready to tell even a piece of your story. And she said that she got involved with the archery team with you, and she finally started to really find her voice again. So you are truly helping women. And I find it to be especially incredible that you only served for a short amount of time. Right. You unfortunately did experience sexual assault in the military. You didn't even realize it until you reconnected with a community that for some reason you already felt a bond with. And that is why, because you were living with the same invisible wounds that we are, but you just hadn't realized it yet.
It was because I am a leader. And I think as soon as you step off the bus in basic training and you have to put your feet, I don't know if you all do that, on the little yellow things, it's never about you, right? Yeah. At least in the Army, you never leave anybody behind, and it's not about you. I mean, that's the whole break people down. It's the ego, because it ain't about you. You know what? Life ain't about you. It really isn't. It's about, to me, my MS is very progressive now. It's incurable. Time definitely is not on my side, but I ain't over. When I got the last MRI, I had 11 new lesions on my cervical spine, 2 of them at C2. If those lesions go through my spinal cord, it's incompatible with life. I was terrified, and I was ready to just end it, to be quite honest. I said, I've been running from this disease for 40 years. I'm tired. I just want to be done, and I want to choose how I get to exit this race. And it was actually my son, and Lucy Delgado said, you haven't been fucking running from it. You've been fighting it, and you're going to give up now? My son is, and my daughter, but because he's military, he gets it. He's like, oh, you're going to throw in the towel now? You're going to let it win now? Why? Why would you're not running from it? You've been fighting it the whole way. Now that the heat is on, you're going to walk away. You're going to fade away. And he's right. I'm not going to do that because that's not who I am. Because I lead like I learned in the military, even though I was only in there a short amount of time, those tenets, it's not about you. You don't leave anybody behind. And, the respect that you have to have with these, but that camaraderie too, right?
Mhm.
So I actually I resigned now. I was on the board of directors for the United States Olympic Committee as an athlete rep. But the history changing thing about that was I was elected by able-bodied peers. There's para divisions and there's able-bodied. And you think of how many thousands, 100,000 archers probably belong to USA Archery. And they voted me. They wrote me in to represent them. So I was in a meeting and we were talking about voting rights, and they wanted only people who had been to the Olympics or Paralympics or World Championships to vote on certain things. And I'm like, nope. If they're paid their dues and they're in good standing, they should get a vote. And this man on the Zoom said to me, and no offense, Miss Coryell, but are you former military? And I said, well, I'm trying not to be offended because you just said that, but you think you know better because you're an attorney. But yes, I am. I am absolutely. And he said, what I was trying to say before I offended you was that you lead from the rear, but there's more than one way to lead. He said the athletes that have been there from the first arrow that they've shot to the Olympic stage have lived that whole experience. So when they vote on critical issues, they've been through it. When you get, kids that are just barely learning to shoot a bow, they don't know that. So I'm like, you're not wrong. But I still think that my leadership is that I don't leave anybody behind. And he apologized, but it was just funny that he would say that because it's so prevalent in the military, the way we lead.
Yes.
Even look at the last guy that was out of the withdrawal of Afghanistan.
Mhm.
There's books written on it, Why Leaders Eat Last.
Mhm.
And when that happened to Vanessa Guillen, and I read all these Me Too stories, and I got involved with Pink Berets, and these young men and women, the things, I was like, nope, not on my watch. Nope. I mean, my thing isn't, congressional or advocacy at like the national level. I'm at this level. I am a mom through and through. I will mama you to death. And if I really like you, I'll feed you because that's my love language. But this is what I can do to heal and lead by example. I'm really, really horrified at the shit that I hear from men and women that has happened to them in the military, because it isn't about sex. It's about power and control and aggression and all that other crap. It's not put, tab A in slot B. It's way more than that. And it takes so much from people. But I want to tell them, you get to decide. You get to decide what your story looks like. And, you and I connected because we already started behind the 8 ball. And you know what? Maybe that was a blessing, Janae. Maybe that's why we're leaders, because we've never been anything but behind the 8 ball.
Yep. And you're way more than a leader. You are a hero. You're an absolute hero. You're my hero. Your story is amazing, and I'm so excited to follow the journey that you guys have coming up with the Pink Berets archery team.
Oh, me too.
It's just, I'm super excited. I love the lives that you're changing and the fact that you've moved essentially full-time into purpose. Before we wrap up, Lia, I just want to give an opportunity for you to let listeners know where they can find you online, because I know they are going to want to follow your journey.
Well, I'm on Instagram. I have a TikTok that I haven't posted to lately, and I'm on Facebook, but Pink Beret Archery. So it's Pink Berets with an S Archery is both on Facebook and on Instagram, and I will always be connected to them. But the coolest thing that we did this last week when we were looking at logos and things is we were trying to find a quote that would embody everything that we are. And Val told you about how she feels so supported, and it's because we found our people, or I helped them find their people, because isn't that legacy? Mm-hmm. Leaving the world a better place than when you found it? So I'm planting little trees that I'll never see grow up. And I'm okay with that. But the quote that we found that just rings true is, her spirit, just like the fire raging within her, remains untamed. So untamed, that's our word.
Absolutely.
I think that's absolutely perfect, right?
Absolutely. 100%. What an amazing story. Thank you so much, Lia, for being here. I hope to have you back again soon. And I just want to wrap with this. No one owes you anything in life. People tend to act in their own best interest. So when they fail you, don't take it personally. You take ownership of your life and transform yourself from a victim into a victor. It's never too late to take the first step, just like Lia did, towards becoming the hero you have always needed.
This has been a recording of the Perfectly Flawed podcast, and we thank you for listening. The Perfectly Flawed podcast is produced by Janae Sergio. You can purchase Janae's heroic book, Perfectly Flawed, A Veteran's Journey from Homeless to Hero, on Amazon or perfectlyflawedbook.com. Look for us on Facebook and Instagram at Perfectly Flawed Podcast, and on Twitter at P_FLWD_podcast. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date for when new episodes drop.